So hello, I'm here with you, Naomi Novik, with the new book, and this is a Portuguese version. I would like to know, because I saw a little about your life previous to writing. I know you went to video games and you did a video game, and I think it's very similar to write a story to a video game and to write a book. But I want you to explain a little bit about how you start in computational science and then you came to literature.
Yes. So a role-playing game like Neverwinter Nights, or like Witcher, um, or like Dragon Age, these are games um, that want story, that are trying to let you, the reader, the player, participate in the story, write it almost with the author, with the other creators. But even as an author, when you're writing a book, I always like to say that I feel that half of any book is the reader, is what the reader brings. Because if you close the page, right, and put the book down, the story stops. You have to join me in a book. And so I think that's one way in which it's very common. It's very similar.
Okay, so why you chose this topic to write fantasy?
I love all speculative fiction, fantasy, science fiction, and historical fiction. For me, all three have what they are doing is world building. It's building a world. It's taking the reader on a journey to a world other than the one we are actually in on a day-to-day level. And because you're doing that, it gives you, as the writer, much more power over the world, and it lets you say, all right, this is the specific story I want to tell, and I can push aside the other parts of the real world that I don't want to think about and make my story, make the world of my story work for the story that I'm trying to tell. As a writer, I like that power. I like what that does. And as a reader, I like it because for me, it's like traveling. It's why I wanted to come to Lisbon. It's because I love, when I travel, I don't want to I don't want to fly from New York to Lisbon and have McDonald's, right? What you come for is to experience a different place. You want to have that experience, and I love to have that experience as a reader. That's why I love to read fantasy and why I love to write fantasy both.
Okay, so how are you feeling in Lisbon, in Portugal?
Oh, wonderful. Yesterday I spent the whole day in, I'm going to mangle this pronunciation, so please correct me. Quinta da Regaleira?
Quinta da Regaleira.
Quinta da Regaleira. All right, a little closer. And I just, it was just a magical place. And the day before that, not the day before, the 2 days before that, I was walking through Lisbon, through the historical district, the Alfama, and up to the Castelo de St. George. And one of the things that struck me is, so I was up there at the very top of the castle, and you can look out and you see, one of the beautiful things about Lisbon, right, is that as a city, the buildings have enough in common, but without being exactly the same. So, the orange roofs and the white walls and the ways that the city reveals the levels of the city, and that mingles for me somehow with the sense that you have these ancient buildings. We saw the ruins of the Roman amphitheater, and then at the same time you look out from the walls and you see the bridge, and you see the shipping, the port, and you feel that it's not just a relic. It's a place where people have been living here for thousands of years, and all of them leaving their mark on it. And so for me especially, as I'm saying, it feels like getting to journey, not just to a different country and a different culture, but also into the past, and to feel, connections to that, of course, because of the way that that history is, my own family came from Eastern Europe, but all of Europe has so many common threads. You know, the Romans came everywhere, really, and those marks are everywhere. So I'm really enjoying it.
Can you imagine a book in Sintra, in Quinta da Regaleira?
So in fact, I'm going to be using a piece of it. There's, you know, the well, the initiation well. I saw a photograph of that well years ago. Years ago, I had no idea where it was from. I just saw it. It was on Tumblr. You know, somebody had this photo set, and I saw this picture, and I thought that's a beautiful place. I would love to see it. And then when I was traveling to Lisbon, so what should I see around Lisbon? And people said, oh, you should go to Sintra. And I looked at it, and I recognized the photograph. And I realized I'm writing a story right now that's about, it's a school of magic that's set in a tower. And it's vastly larger, but it doesn't exist in the real world. And I think that it's going to be set, that the place of connection where that school is connected to the real world is going to be that well. It's that circular sort of corkscrew motion is exactly the same structure as my tower in the book. So it was wonderful, actually.
So we'll be waiting for that book to see Portugal.
Yes.
in that book.
Yeah.
So I was wondering how you feel when you finish writing a book. Do you feel disappointed because it ended?
No,
do you feel grateful
no,
because
like,
it ended? Finally
yes, I'm done. I finished it. You know, I'm the runner. I'm on a marathon, and I crossed the finish line, and that's how it feels to me always.
And you always hope that the book will make change a little bit in each person you read it, probably.
You know, I write. What I think every writer wants is to make connection, and I feel that I don't. It's not that I want my book to make other people think the way I think. You know, I don't try to put a message into my book so much, but I want to feel that my books are connecting people to me and to each other.
Feel like a worldwide connection between the readers and the authors, the readers and authors.
Yes, yes. You know, that I do feel that that's one of the wonderful things about fandom in general, right? That fandom, in some ways, you know, our world has become much more secular, right? A lot of people have lost what, you know, religion once was, and also we've forgotten, I think, in some ways, you know, as politics has become much more national, you know, we see much more media, and the media becomes sort of broader and homogenized. So, you know, I live in New York, but I see the same news stories often that somebody in like Texas or California is seeing very often. And instead of, you know, hearing mostly about the local stories where I can get involved, right? And very often now I think we've lost that sense of civic engagement. So we've lost a little bit of, you know, religion, we've lost a little bit of civic, of the state, and fandom in a way has the wonderful power that, you know, right, it's Stranger Things, it's or Frozen, that because we're all seeing the same things, which is not what's bad about the fact that we're seeing the same things is that it's all like being pumped out of Hollywood as opposed to being more back and forth. But the wonderful thing about it is that it allows us to communicate with one another. You know, that somebody who's a fan of Game of Thrones, you know, yesterday I saw somebody in a costume, maybe we couldn't even speak a word of each other's languages, but we can still smile and feel like we have connected and we both know, like, this is a story that we both love and that we are connecting to in some way. So it creates, fandom, I think, in a way, creates that community. And it's not a replacement, I think, but in a way, it's a good way to teach us how to make those connections, you know.
So if you would speak to a younger generation or to someone who's trying to write a book? What you tell them?
You mean like advice, writing advice? Finish. Finish a lot of things. Finish a lot of stories. If you don't have a lot of time, don't try to write a novel. Write a lot of short stories and work on your endings. Because the number one thing, the number one problem by a long distance that I see new writers have is that they don't know how to end their ideas. They have ideas, they have a great idea, they start it, and then they kind of get stuck somewhere in the middle, and they're like, oh, I've got this new idea, and they start another one, and then they start another one, and they start another one, and they are getting better and better at starting things well, and then they try to write the middle or the end, and they're like, oh, but this isn't as good as my beginning. Well, of course, because you've practiced beginning 100 times, but you haven't practiced ending. You have to practice ending. And so that's the number one piece of advice that I give to new writers.
So now if I ask you favorite book, favorite movie, favorite TV series, favorite video game, could you tell me?
You know, I can't easily because it's always changing and there's always like a different piece that's favorite. I can tell you ones that I love, some that I love. I'm a huge fan of Ursula Le Guin, I would say. I've been rereading a lot of her work since she passed away. But even before then, many of her stories and books have been very important to me. There's one of her short stories, very famous in English, I don't know if it's been translated, is The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. And I think of that story, I've been thinking of that story a lot. And I think, obviously, there's The Wizard of Earthsea. I love that book very much. I'm also a huge fan of Anne McCaffrey, the Pern novels, and of Robin McKinley. She's one of my very favorite writers. Thinking of TV, you know, I have so little time to watch things these days. I very much enjoyed substantial portions of Game of Thrones until I was very disappointed in the last season, as I think many fans. Yes, you know, I think all Game of Thrones fans bond deeply over our like, why feeling over the last season. But, you know, I feel that up until the point where they went away from the, you know, where they went past the end where he's reached with the books, that they were doing a brilliant job of taking an enormous amount of material and condensing it into a narrative that worked beautifully on TV, and obviously wonderful acting. I think, I'm trying to think what else. What have I loved lately? There's something that I'm just thinking of right now, but I'm not, like, it's not coming to my mind, because right now I'm all like, Sintra's amazing, you know, because I was just there yesterday, and that's what's in my head right now.
And video game.
Oh, video game, yes. Well, Witcher 3. I played about 200 hours of Witcher 3. These days, I'm only allowed to play a video game like once every 2 or 3 years, because when I play a video, I have to do every quest. I have played every game of Gwent. Like, Geralt he doesn't care. Ciri's out there.
Till the end.
Yes. Yes.
So, this is our blog.
Oh, that's
yeah.
great.
So what do you think this means, cafemaisgeek?
I don't, cafemaisgeek, most geek, is it?
Yeah, it's like more geek.
More
Coffee,
geek?
more geek.
Yes.
So what do you think it means?
Oh, are you geeks about coffee too? Because I like the way that your heads are like little coffee cups in the illustration.
We don't have a coffee yet. We cannot be
Yes.
the central perk of the friends yet.
Yes.
But what do you think we talk about in this type of blog?
Oh, I would guess the geeky topics and things like TV and
Yeah.
movies and books
Yeah, everything
and
that is
things.
geek.
Yes.
It's in our blog.
Yes.
We do a lot of reviews of books, such as yourself and
That's
many
great.
authors. Video games as well, Witcher. which is a part of everyone's life.
Yes,
So
yes. It's a good thing. Some friends just got me back like World of Warcraft Classic. You know that they just re-released it, so they started having me do that. But I had tendinitis in my Warcraft Classic. You know that they just re-released it, so they started having me do that. But I had tendinitis in my hands, so I can't really play very much right now.
yeah, World of Warcraft is awesome.
Yes. Um, but yeah. So.
But in your mind, it's Sintra. It's
Yes.
still Sintra.
Yes.
So it's all the place you visit is Lisbon, or be visiting another place in Portugal?
Just Lisbon and the area, yeah. Because I have to go home. I have a little daughter back
Oh.
home. She's waiting for Mama to come home with presents. With presents. Yes.